जय हिंद दोस्तों, मैं हूं मेजर मोहम्मद अली शाह. So yesterday I had a wonderful session with Mr. Chetan Sharma. Wonderful session, and he threw a lot of lights and ideas on a lot of things. So I requested sir again, sir, please just spare a few moments for me just the next day. And he was very, very gracious and kind enough because of the personal equation and the personal liking that he had towards me. So I thought, let me this time go a bit step further and let me try getting out some more things out from him because it was so enjoyable, and the people who saw it, we had a tremendous response and they loved what sir is, an ocean of knowledge. So well, he needs no introduction as it is firstly, and whatever little bit I had said yesterday, but since he's been so gracious to spend time with me today, let me come straight to the point and sir ask you a few direct pointed questions. Are you ready, sir?
Yeah, you're now behaving like me, right? Because that's really what I do. I used to do for a long time for my living. But yes, of course, I'm ready. Thank you for the
So
introduction.
this time you're on the other side. This time you're on
On
the
the
other
other
side.
side, yeah.
First, tell me,
That's right.
how does it feel to be on the other side, sir? For a change.
Well, let's just say that I think, I have a habit of looking at the mirror. So I'm not very uncomfortable at being
Okay.
on the other side. I often feel uncomfortable with what I see in the mirror, but I'm not uncomfortable being on the other side. So yes, well, for me, it's fine. I mean, I quite enjoy the process. I quite enjoy not just making people uncomfortable at times. I quite enjoy being uncomfortable myself because that's the only way to get out of the comfort zone. And as an entrepreneur, I think that's a great way to go.
Sir, very well answered, sir. Okay, sir, so you're ready. So fasten your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my dear friends. Here we go on a question answer session because, yes, please, what the conversation right now. I've come prepared with some questions in my mind. Sir, now, what does success mean to you? To some people, it means money, fame, good health, happiness, whatever, good family life, whatever. But according to Mr. Chetan Sharma, what is success?
Well, firstly, I think it's an interesting question. It means all of that, all of what you said, and perhaps a little more. But Major Shah, I think that success is a tremendously overrated word. It's very hyped, it's extremely illusionary, and it's very, very subjective. Success is, it's often misconstrued as recognition, and that's where I think we get entrapped by it. I mean, let's take a few examples. Uh, a disabled person is able to live life independently and responsibly. Is that not success?
Right,
A housewife
right.
uh, lives uh, in a quiet, understated manner for most of her life, yet ensuring that she is the binding factor of a family with limited budgets. Is that not success? Uh, a driver who sacrifices his life, spends all his savings in trying to educate his children, and does that with a lot of grace. Is that not success? That's
Hmm.
immense success, but that may not be recognized. And that's why I say that success is a very overrated, hyped, and also illusionary word. It's quite a myth in so many ways. Uh, so there's another side to it also, Major Shah. Look at the people who were termed to be recognized and thereby successful, the people who make the headlines. And I had the fortune, being a television journalist, of speaking to a lot of them across the spectrum. And honestly, I found a lot of them were not really as happy as they would be. They were extremely frustrated, not just with the fact that they were not able to achieve what they had set out to, but also they were finding it difficult to actually live up to the expectations what were portrayed of them and what was portrayed on, let's say media or in the public space are very different from what they actually are. So the attempt to live those double lives, was very frustrating for them, and that wasn't fulfilling. So they never considered themselves the kind of success which media had portrayed them to be. So there are two sides of the coin. There's a third side as well. If you look at success, I mean, Charles Sobraj was a very successful criminal. He was great. He was a
Right.
mastermind. But that's also a benchmark of success. So what then is success? I think I come back to the point, success is very, very subjective. It's really hyped. It's overrated. And it's an illusion. I think the
Right.
words which could replace success and connote what you're getting at could be a combination of, let's say, progress and satisfaction. So,
Very
progress is
well
very
answered.
easy to measure. You started from point A in your life, you reached point B in your life where you are. There's a starting point, there's a current point, and there would be some difference between the two, which is your progression. And that should, in many ways, be accounting for your achievement and your successes. The other side is, of course, the emotional side to this, and that is this, whether you gain satisfaction from this. And that again is a very important part of this equation of so-called success. Because it's again, this is subjective, but success and satisfaction is a very relative term, right? To a lot of us. And if you look at the Maslow's need hierarchy theory, the conventional system of how a human being moves up the ladder, then self-actualization is at the top of the pyramid, and that should connote success. And or the fact that success is often seen in relation to others, and I've often advocated this, Major Shah, that we need to compete. We must be competitive, but we need to compete to excel, not to defeat, because then it becomes an unfulfilling competition in many ways. There must be a scope of a win-win. So I know as an army personnel, you may differ with that, and I respect that as well, because that context of defeat and excel is very different. But in the civilian world, let's say that it's very important to look at competition as a mode of excellence, not just as a mode of defeating somebody. So success has a lot of connotations, really. For me, I know it's been a long answer, but I've often talked about success. So for me, success is a combination of a spiritual quotient, and I draw from all religions when I say this. I mean, from Hinduism, if I'm able to understand and adopt the law of karma, I think that's immensely successful. I'm able to draw from Islam the values of self-restraint, the values of austerity. I think that's immense success. And for me, the most simplest and one of the most beautiful definitions of success is actually advocated by Guru Nanak Dev Ji in his 3 principles, which he calls, for life, which is Kirat Karo, Van Chakho, or Nam Japo. Essentially, Kirat Karo means that you work, and work is your worship, work honestly for your means. Van Chakho is to learn to share a part of whatever you earn from your living with others. And the third is to remember to take the name of God, to live in gratitude as you also live within your own attitude. So I think these are all wonderful definitions of success, and I'm still learning how to be successful.
That's very, very well answered by you, sir. I mean, that gives it very crystal clearly. I mean, it gives the answer. I keep giving leadership lessons, lectures on because by virtue of coming from the army, and people like the army officers to come and deliver a talk on leadership. So these are the points which I am going to inculcate in my talk as well. Thank you very much for giving me these ideas, sir. Sir, also, I would see you as a child. There are various things you wanted to do. You have and you have been a very successful, I would say, a journalist, a very successful anchor, a very successful voiceover artist, a very successful entrepreneur, a very successful journalist. That I've said, a very successful educationalist. I mean, what not? You name it. And I would say a very successful thrower voice as well, if I may say so. So, looking back in life, do you have any regret, even slightest?
Well, that's a simple one to answer, and it's a very simple answer. No,
Okay.
because I think that regret stems from 2 major quotients. One is not trying, and the other is not learning. Well, I can tell you something that I've always tried. I have never fell short of trying to always do things. And yes, of course, failed numerous number of times, but always tried. The need to be proactive rather than reactive, the need to not procrastinate, the need to, as Nike says, just do it, the need to constantly do has been, a very intricate part of my lifestyle, if I could say. And I think if you're able to do that, you won't regret. So I certainly don't regret. The other one is not learning. So as I said earlier, and I constantly say that there's been a lot of failures, and I've attempted to learn from a lot of them. The pace of learning could be questionable, but the attempt to learn has certainly been there. So regret, I wouldn't say. I say really no regrets. Also, Major Shah, if you look at regret, it connotes a sense of expectation. It also connotes a sense of ingratitude in some way. And the way I've lived my life, I've always chosen to accept rather than expect. And I've always chosen to be grateful for anything that comes my way. So certainly, I'd say no regrets, only experiences, no regrets.
Sir, I have a very intense question for you now. Who do you define Chetan Sharma as?
That is intense. But actually, it's a great question, but I do have an answer to that. I mean, the reason why I have an answer to that is because I have been asked this question before. And always, I gave different answers. I was trying to figure out, because obviously I caught by surprise. But now having seen through a lot of these questions, I would expect a question like that. And I think it is a great question because it's a very difficult question to answer, over the years, simply because it requires to be looking at the mirror. And when I did answer this question earlier, it was incomplete. So what I did do when I had these questions or questions like these, I just went around to people like the typical journalist, whether my mom, my family, my wife, my children, my friends, my foes, a lot of them there as well, adversaries, strange people just off the block, viewers on television, distant relatives, schoolmates and stuff like that, to understand, what do they think, of their interactions with me. And I came out with a definition. So I'm often called as CS, my initials, by those who know me well. So leave the S aside. I'll talk in terms of the C. So for me, the C stands for a variety of things. It stands for courage. It stands for confidence. It stands for
I'm just putting you on the highlight on the screen, sir.
Yeah, it stands for compassion. Very important. Stands for compassion.
Highlighting the space for you.
Right.
Highlighting the space for you, sir.
Right. It stands for creativity. It stands for contribution. I spoke about contribution yesterday. So courage. Let's start with courage. I think courage has been a very intricate part of me. I mean, courage definitely would be represented by the ability to take risk, the ability to to face losses, to take failures and come back. And I've done a lot of that, as an entrepreneur. I've done a lot of that as even when I pursued jobs, even when I pursued advisory positions, even when I dabbled with a lot of things in my career. So I've definitely been a risk taker. Even starting off a business at my age right now, this will probably even be my 6th or 7th venture into enterprise. So certainly courage is one of them. Confidence was the second one, which I spoke about. Now, confidence is again something which actually is evidenced first by my mom, who always told me that, who keeps telling me also that I got admission into one of the premier schools in Kolkata, St. Xavier's, purely because of confidence. Those are the days, Major Shah, when coming from a business family was not looked up to in the premier institutions. They wanted people from, the IAS officer cadre. They wanted people from, parents whose parents were in positions of power at some stage. But now, of course, businessmen are considered to be the people in power. They're termed as entrepreneurs. It wasn't in those days. So getting in was purely based on merit or what you are, and confidence came up there. That's what she always tells me. And then the second moment which was ratified was by my teachers when I was made school president. And they nominated me for that, not because of anything else but confidence, because I was quite a nuisance factor in school, extremely naughty and indisciplined. So I think confidence helped me to fight my way through. So confidence definitely is a part of me. The other thing is the third C is compassion. I think that's something which is very close to my heart. Compassion, which is represented by element of gratitude, an element of humility, element of kindness, element of care. And I think we've built a lot of beautiful relationships along the way because of this facet. So very grateful also to be compassionate, I think. Then I spoke about creativity. Well, creativity has been a function of me simply because I get bored very easily, to be honest. And that's where I experiment a lot. And I do a lot of different things. You mentioned, look at my career path, business family, starting out with family business, being a radio jockey, cricket commentator, then an anchor on a variety of subjects, then a stock market analyst, then a proper television anchor from across all national channels, a few international channels, and being an advisor on the board of companies, being a CEO, being an editor, being an entrepreneur alongside all these kind of things, and being getting into a state of counseling, of practicing NLP, becoming a career coach, even a life coach. So a variety of things. So, I mean, I think it's important if you want to do different things, then you have to be creative at some level, and not just be creative by doing different things, but also by doing things differently. And I think, as I spoke to you a little earlier about the child in me. If you remember, I think that was in our first episode, and I just mentioned about being a nuisance in class. I think that was also a desire to do things differently, to be different from the others in class. So it could be also construed as being negative, as being indisciplined, but it was also disruptive in so many ways. And the word disruption is now really looked up to. I mean, in the days when we were in school, disruption meant indiscipline, meant not being conformist. And I was always anti being a conformist. And so, in fact, in so many ways, I chose not to conform to things and disrupt things. And I think that helps in your stage of being an entrepreneur. So I often even tell students, you must be as naughty as possible, because that's a way of actually also expressing yourself and thinking differently, and trying to challenge the status quo. So yes, definitely, creativity was important. And I think finally we can end off with the word contribution, which is extremely important to me and my life's philosophy. And contribution doesn't necessarily mean charity. It doesn't necessarily mean philanthropy. I think contribution means just being useful, being selfless and being useful in any situation, any circumstance. That could mean anything, but just put yourself to use. So that's a way of being proactive rather than reactive in most situations. I think that's really, in several ways, that defines me. I think you're on mute. You got on mute. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, yes, sir. So I
Right.
remember
I'm sorry.
sir, I remember you when you had mentioned about the way you mentioned about the different C's. You have mentioned about the 5 P's of public speaking, in fact, and
Okay.
It was a very, very useful session. That one. I mean, that is something which I will never ever forget. I mean, I gained so much from it. So, but now you have had the pleasure and the fortune of rubbing shoulders and interacting with a lot of television personalities, the big people, the who's and who, basically. Just the way I would say I am right now interacting with Chetan Sharma. Similarly, you would have. I would like to know. You must have had various moments. Some I wouldn't want to know which is your most cherished moment, in fact, of your entire television career so far, sir.
Hmm. So, can't be a moment, Major Shah. I think it's moments. Let me try and recount some, and
Right.
some of them that immediately come to mind. I think the first thing was getting a call from Dr. Roy's office, from NDTV, and offering me a job when I had not really applied for one. That itself was hugely gratifying. That you're being watched and perhaps you're being appreciated. So that I think obviously was your first
Sorry
moment,
to interrupt. Sorry to
and
interrupt. Did you
right.
feel that you were being watched so widely at that time? Did you feel? Did you get an intuition at that time that you would be so widely watched that Dr. Roy will reach out to you?
Mm, I don't know. Obviously, I never realized that because that time I was working with Doordarshan, right? Because I was running my, I was obviously a part of my family business, so I was doing programs as a freelancer. And of course, those times there were not too many channels, so I could have been would have definitely been a beneficiary of that. And I was one of the few people in television that time that had studied quite a bit in the field of business and commerce, and I knew that journalists, business journalists, were hard to come by. So I think that came to my advantage, and that would have really brought about this initiation. But I was not expecting it, for sure, if that's the question that you asked. So no, I wasn't. Then in NDTV, I remember having started the first Hindi business show in the country. It was called Star Bazaar at that time, and why it was particularly close to my heart is because while I always have been bilingual in whatever I pursued in life, I was never I never presented formally in a public space in Hindi. It was always in English, and just to do that, and it was at a very short notice, and not using a teleprompter because I was very confident of knowing my subject and being able to put that across in a language which was acceptable and appreciated and interesting and engaging. So I think that was, one of the moments which I remember very vividly. In fact, the most, I think, cherished, you asked for a moment. This was a very challenging moment, Major Shah. And I remember when I was actually doing Star Bazaar at 6:30, the 6:30 to 7 show. So I used to do the Hindi one in 6:30 to 7, then do the English one at 9:30. That is after Dr. Roy's, his famous show of 9 o'clock. So during this one of these 6:30 shows was when 9/11 happened, and lo and behold, I was doing my program, and we didn't have because it was a sponsored program, we didn't have the ability to move out of that program. So, and because I was there, the anchor on air, so actually there was somebody who was speaking to me in my earpiece. The director
Hmm.
was narrating what was going on from, I think, maybe BBC, CNN that time. And while he was speaking to me in my ear, I was actually translating that into Hindi and giving the information on my program.
Right.
That was like a huge test. It was completely, out of the blues, and it was a wonderful moment. I'll never forget that moment. Unfortunately, I don't know whether we have a recording of that, but it was really, really very challenging, but extremely exciting. I remember the compliments I got after that. So yeah, it was something to cherish. Then I guess interviews. I think the most talked about interview and the most popular one was with Narendra Modi ji, and I remember that also happened when I reached 3.5 hours late. I took a flight to Ahmedabad.
Wow.
That time was when it was all fogged in, and the flight was 3.5 hours late, and I just was running against time, and I went right through. And imagine keeping a person of his stature waiting for 3.5 hours. But He was gracious when he knew that, what had happened. Obviously, he was aware of everything, and he just welcomed me, and he spoke to me as if I was a friend, somebody I'd known for a long time. I hadn't met him a couple of times before, but certainly, no, just as a rookie journalist at that point in time. And I think, if I remember correctly, the first time in that interview, which won a national award, was when he actually revealed his intention of his desire to lead the country. And he also did a bit of shairi on that interview. So that was very close to my heart. Then, of course, being a financial journalist, an interview with Warren Buffett. I mean, that is again when his organization called me to host a show when he was coming to India for the first time. That was a huge moment for me, really. Then, of course, a lot of other interviews with a variety of sportsmen, a variety of Bollywood stars, things like that. Also, one with Narayan Murthy. I remember when he went point blank on air to say that I've never been asked such sensible questions in my life, sensible and direct questions in my life. So thank you for that. I mean, he ended the program saying that. That was it was very nice. So yeah, of course, these have been the cherished moments. There've been a lot of awkward moments as well. I think I shouldn't be speaking about that. I'm happy speaking about the cherished moments.
You also did anchor shows with India Ahead. I mean, though you were the founder, the boss over there, but there were times
Yeah.
when you would see like were you missing out on anchoring? Were you missing out the speaking assignments, or it was the speaker, the anchor, the voice inside you which couldn't hold you back? You said, "Let me now take on the mic and let me host this show right now." Did it happen like that?
I think, yeah, it's good you reminded me of India Ahead because that was also a cherished moment. I mean, to set up a channel, a national channel, Major Shah, in a record time with a shoestring budget, I think I did stretch myself. I did outdo myself in several ways. I never realized that I could do it, but I did manage. The great team also, which, of course, enabled that along the way. I've never been a person, who's ever, as I said, being selfless is a very important part of me, Shah. And I've never always desired to be in the limelight. I've never been somebody who hogs the limelight. I have been in the limelight, but I've never ever desired to just do that. So I always believed that even though I was at the helm of the organization, everybody should be given a fair spot. And that's the reason I consciously anchored very few shows. In fact, I came more as as a so-called expert in a lot of those programs. But I think that's because I wanted to ensure that the people, who were in the positions they were doing the jobs that they were meant to. We've been through a lot of this, in the television journey. When it gets, as I said, fiercely competitive, everybody wants to do the best shows and things like that. So I've seen a lot of that, and I saw the ills of that, the limitations of that, the pettiness of that, and I certainly didn't want to indulge in it. So yeah, that's the reason why I chose to have limited anchoring, and of course, not to forget, I was the CEO of the company. I had a large, role to play, and it's a very difficult one. So yeah, but it was a cherished moment. Thank you for reminding me of that.
So I would like to catch on to the time when you said the so-called expert, because I can so connect with that. There. I would like to know how was your feeling the first time ever in your life when you were on a panel and you were introduced as an expert, be it in whichever field, be it as a financial expert, be it as whatever in whichever field. When the term expert came to you the first day, you must have been very young at that time. And how was the feeling? And was it embarrassment? Was it feeling of pride? Or how was the feeling, sir?
Well, I think it's good to use the word embarrassment because I ensured that wherever I was never supered as anything. You know what the super is, right? The description of your description that comes, as a line below while you're speaking, was just write my name. Right? I don't want anything else attached to it, and
Right.
I just don't need that kind of ratification. I mean, if I'm able to impact or impress, anybody who's watching me, well enough, then perhaps he would think that I'm an expert. So yeah, that's what it was. I think it was also advantages because I didn't have to wear a tie and do that makeup and be there on time. I was never on time actually. Did I tell you that one of my biggest challenges, I wouldn't say direct, but my challenges was indiscipline. I was always highly indisciplined, even in television. I mean, I used to reach the uh, makeup room 3 minutes before. And I used to be on my seat about 30 seconds before the program. I was always at loggerhead with the director. I'd give them a hard time. And because I just felt that, I was this creative guy. I could do it. I had this bit of a swagger about me that I just want to go in, unprepared and, so that I sound natural. And it did come off, most of the times actually. But in hindsight, I think it was rather stupid. Because had I gone in with a little more preparation, then maybe it would have been better. And not just that, I think when you do something, I realized the value of discipline much later. That came from my father-in-law, observing him being a general in the army. He was, my epitome of discipline. I learned a lot from him, watching him.
So what's your father-in-law's name? What's his name?
General Manjeet Dugal. General Manjeet Singh Dugal.
Of course, sir. General Dugal is a legend. Of course, we heard about him right from the time we've been hearing about General Dugal. Of course.
Absolutely.
I did not. Pardon me, my ignorance. I did not know you were General Dugal's son-in-law.
Yeah, that's why that's why I'm saying that's where the success problem is there. I mean, it's we people who just are supposedly being on air are given too much of airtime, whether the people who actually deserve it, like my father-in-law, are not given that much. And I do absolutely agree. Perhaps you should interview him next time round. But yeah, I picked up a lot of my discipline, whatever I could, in the latter part of my life. But yes, in those moments also, if I look back and look at the industry, I realize how wasteful a lack of disciplined life could be.
So, what would be your advice to the Generation X? To the youth of a country. Especially the budding journalists, for that matter. And secondly, would you advise journalism as a career as well?
For some reason, I thought you were going to be asking this question. Let me break this up into two parts because you've actually asked me two questions. What would be your advice to Generation Next? Very simply put, first is learn to give before you get. Right. Very simple. Just learn to give before you get. Once you start doing that, you will learn patience. You will learn gratitude. And trust me, I'm not being philosophical or spiritual out here. The more you give, the more you get. This is a life experience. Right? So learn to give before you get. Number two, I think, from a career counseling point of view, just follow your passion. If you can make and I've done this myself, so I stand testimony to it, is that if you can make your passion your profession, or you can make your profession your passion, you're sorted. And as a part of you spoke about the P's. So I often say, when in counseling, if you have to choose the way you have to choose your career path, look at these 6 P's. I created a 6P model, about in 2020. I created that 6P model. It's quite popular now, across a lot of the universities now. So that model was identify your passion, your first P is passion. Try to marry it with your potential. That's the second P. So marry your passion with your potential. Third is to look at the possibilities. You can have a passion, but if you don't have the potential, it's wasteful, right? And if you have a passion and you have your potential, and there are no possibilities, there are no opportunities, that again is wasteful. So try to marry these first 3 Ps. Then you go into performance and preparation. So performance really would be your benchmark of whatever it be marks. In this primary school system, it's marks, but there are a lot of other parameters now. You have a grade system working. So first, understand what are you going to be judged on, right? Those becomes your performance matrix. and then align it to preparation. So you have your passion, you have your potential, you have your possibilities. You've done that work. You've seen what it takes to judge you on your output. Now, how do you prepare for it? So you look at the skills that you have, or the skills required to fulfill that, make that in your fifth P. And the final P is perhaps the most important. How do you attach all this to purpose, your life's purpose? And that's, really completes the circuit. So that's the way you have to, you look at, approaching your life and your career. But simply put, I think two basic mantras give before you get: follow your passion. If your passion becomes a profession, fantastic. Otherwise, make your profession a passion.
Very,
Yeah,
very
you asked another question. You asked another question, I think, about media. Was it?
Would you
asked something
advocate
about
journalism, media as a career? Okay, let me keep this question for the end, because I have a couple
All
of
right.
other questions as well, sir. And after
Okay.
that, this would make more sense, perhaps. I just realized that. So we, as Indians right now, we have taken had the presidency of the G20 countries. We had the dialogues on 2nd, 3rd March recently. We had a lot of diplomatic visits last year. In fact, in the end of March, early April, we had so many. India tried to play a peace broker during the Russia-Ukraine war. We got a humanitarian corridor, all right. We got a ceasefire for some time. We very successfully ran Operation Ganga. We got over 29,000 students back to India from Ukraine. In fact, we had during the Taliban crisis, we helped out there as well. And recently, we sent out NDRF team and our defense forces to Turkey and to Syria to help in the earthquake. We've also aided Sri Lanka. We gave them $2.8 billion aid in the month of February last year itself. And on the same time, right now, the scenario of our country, we saw slightly, I don't mean to make it controversial, but a very realistic question, sir, because I have seen two different, on WhatsApp groups, especially in our country, I've seen two different people fighting that, oh, this is a political post, this is not a political post. Oh, I am right wing, so-called. I am so-called left wing. Oh, I am so-called BJP, I am so-called Congress or Aam Aadmi Party or whatever. So now there has been a lot of contention about Rahul Gandhi being expelled, and this scenario of the country, or things are not good, things are fine. And I found your balance, your analysis always to be very, very balanced, impartial, neutral, and you speak your mind to the point, to that you don't really see any ideology or anything, but you are very, very immaculate and very rational in your thinking, sir. Sir, I would like to ask you, do you think India is on the right path as of today?
Direction, yes. Pace is debatable. See, you've already put across a lot of points, and of course, you yourself are a popular, guest on a lot of television channels. So and you do interact and debate very well with a lot of people. So, and I mean, television channels are full of
Your dog
these
is agreeing
answers.
with you there. Even your dog is agreeing
These,
with you there, sir. Which breed is he?
which well, hello. This is a dog from outside. Actually, it's not from home.
Okay, all right.
Right.
Then he's perhaps disagreeing with you.
Yeah, I think so. I think most dogs disagree with me. I tend to bark very often as well. Okay, so I mean, coming to we were talking about India on the right path. So you've answered a lot of this in the statements you've made, which are all facts, things that have happened. So, and I think I summed it up by saying the direction, yes, and the pace is debatable. Now, this answer can be answered in terms of the economic part, in terms of political part, in terms of social part. I think you've spoken a lot about the political and social part, and we hear a lot about it, on national television as well as the digital platform. So we keep that aside for a bit, although I have views on that. But let me stick to what perhaps I would like to believe as a student of economics. I would be more nuanced in, and that is economics. And I think in several ways we've done ourselves a great service in the economic front. And of course, a large part of this is coming from the demographic dividend. But the fact that we've got to harness that, I think, is something that is in the right direction. The pace, I am not very convinced by. The inclusivity, I'm not very convinced by. For me, those are two, very, very deep drawbacks. And it cannot happen, without inclusion. I think it's very important for us to portray, and something that we need to do this, not just as a nation, but also as humanity as a whole, is to understand that in the next 2 or 3 decades, more than half the workforce will be coming from this country, right? Will be Indian or Indians living elsewhere. And it's not just the responsibility of India or the government in India, but the entire world to understand the huge stake it has in this country. And I think once this narrative is not just disseminated, it's also accepted well, I think this country will automatically be on the right path, because everybody's got a stake in it, right? If you're going to have people from here, whether it's an outsourced entity or whether it's an employee, or whether it's a colleague that is coming from this country, the stakes in India are very high. And as long as we're able to make every single nation in the world, developed or underdeveloped, poor or rich, aggressive or defensive, understand this, that would have been a major part of the work done. I think the rest will take care of itself. I know this sounds extremely simplistic, but if you look at what all this entails, it's a very difficult process, very tedious process. It's a long drawn process. And a lot of the ills of India, the divisive parts of India, which, whether it's for economic needs or social or political needs, will somewhere down the line be cemented. And technology is going to be a great enabler for all this. I think, the current dispensation is doing a great job to leverage technology and also get more technocrats, in positions of power, and realizing the limitations of politicians. So I think overall it's just this need to convey to the world the relevance of India going forward. I think most people do understand it, but there is still a lot of underpinnings. I think the entire, the richness or our offerings or our diversities or our thinking, our ethos, translating to so many numbers is yet to be, put across in the best light. So I think the moment we do that, the wheels will be in motion. So yes, direction is correct, but pace is contestable.
Right, sir, right. Like, no, even sir, something like Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant. It takes time. Like, as Majru Sultanpuri had once said, मैं तो अकेले ही चला था जानिबे मंजिल, मैं तो अकेले ही चला था जानिबे मंजिल, मगर लोग साथ आते गए और कारवां बढ़ता गया. Right.
So it's beautiful. I think you really hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I'm saying. India is going along by itself, but then people have to start recognizing that. And the log here is not restricted to Indians. I repeat that. It has to be the global citizen. And then, of course, India will come and shine in its true light. That will be India shining.
Absolutely, sir. And the way to do that is, I always feel, in fact, bridging the gap is again through education. And who better than you, the founder of EDUMATE? In fact, you have really branched out in a very big way, in a very successful way towards education after a very successful innings in the media and being a very successful journalist. And now you are into education. So, what, according to you, where do we lack in education, and how can our education system become better?
Well, I think if you read the National Education Policy and all that it espouses, it'll tell you exactly. It's a huge document, and it'll tell you exactly what's been missing, because they're trying to fill those gaps. But at least in this country. We all know that we've had some of the most brilliant minds creating some of the best policies you can think of, but extremely poor will and poor implementation on the ground. So we've all been victims of that, and the education system is no different. I mean, as an economist, you can argue that the amount we spend on as education on our GDP is woeful. It's just about, I think, a tenth of what the US would spend, or any other developed country would spend. So obviously, we've got the first step wrong in terms of allocating enough of budgetary, expenditure on education. But for me, one of the people I've admired all along is Mark Twain. And
Of
two
course.
sayings of Mark Twain actually epitomize the situation of education today. Number one is when he said, "I never let schooling interfere with my education." Right? And the second one is, education mainly consists of what we have unlearned. Two, brilliant quotes of Mark Twain, and they're still so relevant today. And if you look at the entire NEP, that's all that it talks about. So at one level, it tells you how little we have progressed. Because if Mark Twain in his time and age was able to identify this as a gap, I mean, he of course said it in satire that schooling is not education, because schooling doesn't provide you education, and it still is a part of our system. It just tells you that how we have regressed, or at least been stationary when it comes to education. And we're talking about education across the world. It's not just about India. So the question here is, what is the missing link? If we feel that the education has been in silos, has been very rote, learning oriented, has been very skewed by marks. What is it that is missing? So a lot of things. I think the definition of a teacher, has been now changed, and of course we now have the technology coming into play with online education. I'm not going to. It's a very large subject to cover in a question, but let me, if I have to put it in one word, I think what's missing is skills.
Hmm.
Skills, and this is, you can call them life skills, you can call them human skills, is what Simon Sinek calls them, and of course it's the colloquial term is social skills. And we've never been taught that, and this is very important to impart, because this is really what makes us what we are in the future. If we look back and think what were the things we were most challenged by in our education life, and it was the lack of actually learning these skills. So these skills could be leadership, they could be conflict management, it could be teamwork, it could be empathy, it could be inclusion, it could be learning from failures, time management. These are all aspects of skilling, right? Which are in very, very significant in our daily lives, and which is really the differentiator in what makes you employable. I said yesterday in the program that India suffers from unemployment for sure, but it suffers even more from unemployability, and that's a function of the lack of these skills. And if you look at your anybody's career, you'll realize how important this is the missing part. This is the gap in education, and it's something which we in EDUMATE.tv are also trying to fulfill. So I have a bias when I say this. I must make that very clear. But I don't think anybody can deny the fact that that's what's required in the education system.
Very well answered, sir. So, talking about Mark Twain, I remember in my childhood I had seen Oliver Twist, and in that, this little child and his girlfriend was making some noise in the class, she was doing some mischief. So this little child takes the blame on himself. So the teacher calls
Right.
him, and the teacher wallops him, and he takes the blame on her behalf. And then he's sitting by the riverside, and this girl comes to him, starts crying, and says, "How could you be so noble?" And that just picked on. How could you be so noble?
Be
That
so
was so amazing. So, so I would like to ask you, you'd be the best person to answer this, because you have seen the media from close. Now you went to education, and would you now the same question which I had asked earlier. Now I had kept it for the end before I let you go, sir. I would like to ask you: would you actually advocate getting into media for our youngsters today?
Hmm. Uh, Actually, I would advocate being in communication. I think media is restrictive. One should broaden the horizon and be in communication, because that doesn't necessarily just broaden your horizon. It also expands your opportunities of getting employed somewhere.
Hmm.
It's journalism and media is just a part of the entire communication repertoire. And I believe, and I strongly believe, and I know a lot of people will take objection to this, because this is quite anti the stance of what most people would advocate today. But I told you I was disruptive. Is To be a specialist. I'd say you should not be a specialist. You should be a generalist, right? And
Okay.
then choose your path. Then allow the path to happen, right?
This is
Uh,
something very unusual. I'm hearing something very different. Normally, I've
right.
heard be a specialist, don't be a generalist. Here you are saying be a generalist, don't be a specialist. Okay, that's very interesting, sir.
And,
I want to hear more on
and
this.
let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. If you look at the medical field, who is the doctor that is the most desired and the one that's missing today? You remember the term called GP, the general
Right,
practitioner? He was the
right.
first point of contact in India. Even if you go to the UK, it still is the first point of contact, right? We don't have GPs these days. I mean, the GPs used to be the most important element whenever you had a problem. Today, you have to go to a hospital. I mean, they have fancy terms of internal medicine, but that's what specialization. I mean, specialized. Of course, it has a huge advantage, but I think there's also a reverse engineering required. I mean, the need now is for general practitioners as well, because they are the ones who feed you to the specialist, right? So, in the same thing, in terms of let's say, if you're studying communication, you be a generalist. You study. When you study communication, you've got to study
Generalist or
communication.
journalist? So
I
generalist or
talk about
journalist?
generalist, which means
Be a journalist or
you try to first.
I,
Yeah,
I,
and what I'm
I,
trying to say, even
I'm no, I'm trying to. This is a quality I picked up from you on India Head itself. We were talking about Sharad Pawar. You said one sec. You said power or you said Pawar. So now I'm the same thing. I'm asking you. You said journalist or journalist? Okay, right. So
right.
please.
So I said a generalist who's a journalist who's a generalist, which essentially means you don't have to specialize in a field initially of either political journalism or economic or business journalism, or policy journalism, or you don't have to specialize in any of those, or sports journalism for that matter. You should first focus on the basics of communication. People get the basics wrong. Basics of language, of speech, of writing, expression, thinking on your feet, presence of mind, questioning, cross-questioning, and above all, listening. That's a skill in itself. So these are the basics which are missing. If you focus on this and you get these communication equations right, specializing in any field is just a matter of time. And life will provide you that opportunity. Right? It'll take you to where you have to be. And you can pick it up from there. Often it's not predefined. It's an opportunity that you get. I get an opportunity to get into business journalism. That wasn't my chosen sphere or my field. As I told you before, I used to do a lot of. I was in music as a radio jockey. I was cricket commentator, so that was my passion. I used to write Hindi poetry and a lot of those other things, and stuff like that. But then this came along. I'd like to believe that I had my communication skills in place. So once this came along, I had studied business, or even if I hadn't, I was able to hone my skills in studying business and use communication to disseminate.
Now it's my turn. You can hear the dogs outside barking, sir.
I
The outside dogs. They
hope
want to
that's an
leave.
agreement. I hope that's an
They're
agreement.
ready. Sir, please.
So yes, I mean, just get the basics right. Once you get your basics right, trust me, that's the base covered. You will always get opportunities, right? And as a communication specialist, I mean, it's so critical. I even tell my own daughters this, and my nephews and nieces. I mean, just get your communication right. It can, in several ways, camouflage so many limitations of yours if you're able to communicate well. So yes, I definitely would advocate a career in communication, and media could be an intricate part of this for sure. But focus on communication and let that take you wherever. If it takes you to a career in public relations, so be it. Right? It takes you to a career in television journalism, so be it. Right? As a public speaker, so be it. But focus on the communication.
Very well answered, sir. So a lot of times, a lot of people they write into me on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and they send me messages and they say that we do not know how to speak in English. Could you help us with that, please? And we want to be a good communicator. I'm like, hello, who on earth ever told you that speaking good English is being a good communicator? And I think who better than you when you speak it? I think people will take it very seriously. वो आंसर वो उत्तर मैं जानता हूं सर. I would like to hear, our viewers I'm sure would like to hear it from you. Just give your take on communication, because when I tell them, I don't think many people would understand. But when Chetan Sharma says what actually communication is all about, you just mentioned about listening is one of the aspects, very very important aspect. So बहुत लोग अक्सर इसको गलत फहमी समझ लेते हैं कि हमको अंग्रेजी बोलनी है, आती है तो हम अच्छे कम्युनिकेटर बन गए, मगर ऐसा है नहीं बिल्कुल भी. So could you just throw some light for our viewers who are very interested in taking up communication, sir?
I spoke about language, bhasha, right? It's very, very important that whatever language you speak it well. It can be any language, right? And I often and I'm not an advocate, certainly. In fact, to an extent, I abhor the mixing of two languages when you speak. I mean, so even if I have to, give let's say a Hinglish, the term used, talk, I will ensure at least my sentences are complete in one language, right? So, भाषा, अल्फाज, इस पर आप जितना भी आपका उच्चारण, इस पर आप जितना भी तवज्जो दें, आपके लिए अच्छा है. लेकिन भाषा जो है आप एक ही इस्तेमाल करिए. अगर आप हिंदी में बात करना चाहती तो हिंदी में बोलचाल रखिए. हिंदी की अपनी खूबसूरती है, और वहां पे भी उर्दू का मिश्रण हो सकता है, वो ठीक है, वो हमारी हिंदुस्तानी बन जाती है. तो उसमें इतनी खूबसूरती है कि आप इसे समझ में नहीं पाते. और अगर आप किसी भी यदि इंटरव्यू में भी जाएं और वहां पे बातचीत हो और आपको अगर सवाल जो है अंग्रेजी में पूछा जाए, तो आप हिंदी में जवाब दीजिए. बिकॉज अगर आपकी हिंदी बहुत ही बेहतर है अंग्रेजी से, और अंग्रेजी नहीं जानते हैं, लेकिन आपका जो है आपकी जो सोच है, आपकी जो समझ है, वो हिंदी में बेहतर उभरती है, तो हिंदी का इस्तेमाल करिए. और इसमें कोई कमी नहीं है, किसी भी हालत में कोई कमी नहीं. तो आपको अपने जो भी आपकी भाषा है, जो भी आपने सीखा है, आपने समझा है, उसका आप जितनी किफायती से इस्तेमाल करें, जितनी बखूबी आप इस्तेमाल करते हैं, वो आपके लिए जो है लाभदायक है. आपके लिए वो आपकी एक पहचान बन जाती है.
So thank you
again,
very
coming
much.
back to the thing, right, is that even if you want to mix the two languages, then ensure that you get one sentence correct, one sentence in one language, if required. Otherwise, speak in one language, but speak with confidence, speak with conviction, speak with clarity, right? And you'll be home. I think that's what's important. So, conviction, clarity, content, engagement. These are all things that you need to know. And whichever language you can express it, just do it in that language. Trust me, just the way, look at it the other side. Look at it from the other side. For instance, आप बहुत कलिष्ठ हिंदी बोलते हैं, और अगर दूसरे को अच्छी तरीके से समझ में नहीं आए, वो आपको अंग्रेजी में पूछ रहा है, तो आपका दबदबा उस पर उतना ही पड़ता है.
Right.
Just the way that person may think that you're not able to understand him, and may try to think that you're anyway lesser. You've actually proved yourself to be superior because he's not able to understand you in the same light, right? It's just that you may have an expertise in a different language. And any person worth his salt will recognize it. That's why you see some of the most brilliant speakers amidst the current dispensation and the prior one, are so fluent in the language they choose to speak. Most of them are excellent bilingual speakers, but if not, they prefer to speak in Hindi. And they're absolutely brilliant. It's a marvel to watch them speak and to learn from their clarity, their diction, their pronunciation, and their vocabulary. So yes, certainly focus on the language. When I say language, the language which you learn, the language which you know well, just focus on that and make that your strength.
Sir, thank you very much for taking your time, sir, and for consenting to my request. It's been like really very, very gracious, and you have been very kind, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening, sir. Bye.
You too. Namaskar.